Hey everyone, welcome to Lobo TCG, and today I have another deck tech for you. So this one's going to be a little more different than my normal deck techs, because normally I put like research and buy cards, but I have a rare situation where I actually was able to get my cards a little early for the Spider-Man set, and I definitely want to show up this Friday to play some Commander, and I want to have a Miles Morales deck. So I kind of went into my collection and cobbled something together, but I'm pretty happy with what I got. And so just want to point out this is really far from the ideal version of this deck, but this is kind of a version 0 rough draft of this deck, but I haven't played it yet, and we're going to see how it goes later this week. But this is the Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man deck that I'm going to be bringing with me this Friday, and let's take a look at it here. So there's a lot of ways to build this card, because you have the front side. It says when Miles Morales enters, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Then for 3 and Naya, we can transform him, and he becomes the Ultimate Spider-Man. And Ultimate Spider-Man has First Strike, Haste, he has Camouflage, so for 2 mana you could put a 1/1 counter on him, and he gains Hexproof and becomes colorless until end of turn. I think that's a really neat way to convey that Miles is turning invisible. That's kind of his thing. He has a lot of extra powers and from the standard spider people, and whenever you attack, double the number of each kind of counter on each spider and legendary creature you control. So there's a lot of really cool synergies that you can do and a lot of cool ways to build this. The way I went to is basically it's going to be legendary tribal, so I'm leaning more into legendary part of this. So the 1/1 counters we have ways to have that snowball out of control, but we have I would say we have more legendary support than we have counter support, but I'd say it's about maybe a 75-25 split. We're going to go through the deck, but I leaned into the legendaries part, and I specifically leaned into the legendary humans because there's a lot of really fun humans that are legendary within the Naya colors that we can play with. And there's a couple of like human tribal synergy pieces in here, and that's kind of the thread and way I chose to build this deck. And like I said, I don't know where we're going to take this deck or what I want to add to it, what might work, what not might work. Unplayed, obviously, this card's not even technically out as of this recording, and we're going to see how it goes. But I'm really excited for this. So we're going to go through each of these cards, and I'm going to kind of just rationalize why they're there or what I think they can do that's going to be unique to this. And we're going to start with the first one, which is going to be Daljim Pliable Pacifist. He's from the Street Fighter Secret Lair. He has Hexproof unless he's attacking, and whenever a creature you control with Reach attacks, untap it, and it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power than this combat. We don't really care about that. We're mostly here for that last line there, which is whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this is kind of one of our card draw engines. This is an attacking deck. We want to have a lot of attacking, and he's a human, and he is legendary, so he's going to be a target for Miles. I kind of put as many Street Fighter cards in here as I could find, because Ryu and Ken specifically, I've had these cards in my binder since the Secret Lair came out, and I don't like Boros as an identity, and I've had nothing to do with them. The last human tribal I had deck was Selesnya, and they didn't really have a home in it. So finally really got excited to actually, for the first time in like 3 years, put these cards in the deck. So we have Ryu, he has training, and that's a 1/1 counter, so that's some fun synergy there. And then he has Hadouken, so you can pay 5 and untap him, discard a card, and he deals damage equal to his power to any target. This is a 1/1 counters deck, so we could get a lot of... This actually can probably be really some interesting and tricky removal, because we can just sit back and we can attack with him, we can shoot Hadoukens, he can get a bunch of counters, and we don't have to rely on training as a method of getting counters on him. We have Ken, because he's a human, and he's legendary, and he has prowess. We're not really ever going to particularly care about that, but for Boros, he gains First Strike until end of turn, and when he deals combat damage, you can cast a sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the damage without paying its mana cost, and that's a cute effect. We don't really have a ton of sorceries in this deck, so it'll probably be something dumb like a Rampant Growth or something like that, but he's in here because he's a good body for a good mana cost. He has prowess, which can be pretty interesting, but mostly because he's a human and he's going to be a fun target to put stuff on to from Miles Morales. So this is one of the cards that definitely will survive the upgrading cut, and that's Rosa Resolute Mage. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and it gains lifelink until end of turn. She has reach. She's a human. She's legendary, and this is a pretty gnarly card. It's going to gain us a lot of life. We have Helena and Elena, another no-brainer card when you're, I'm building humans, building counters. They have first strike, they have reach. I refer to this card as Diet Xenagos. I own like 7 copies of these girls, and I love them, and they love each other, and that's pretty rad. So at the beginning of combat, put X 1/1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is their power, and that creature gains haste until end of turn. Diet Xenagos is still pretty rad. So we have Boromir, the Warden of the Tower. So he has Vigilance, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So this is an interesting card. It's going to stop any free counter spells, Fierce Guardianships, Deflecting Swats, anything like that. It's absolutely going to deter that, but it's mostly here because he's a human and you can sacrifice him and all my creatures gain indestructible and the ring tempts you, but he's kind of on the maybe list. It was kind of like, when I was trying to fill out spots in this card, in this deck, there's definitely a couple of bench warmers in here that I'm like, this card's been in my binder for years now, and I finally got a place to play them. But Black Panther, not going anywhere. He was one of the first cards where I was like, if I'm building Miles and I'm building humans, I'm building legendary and I'm building counters, T'Challa is going to be there. So he has first strike, and whenever T'Challa or another creature you control attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on target land you control, and then you can use his Vibranium ability, which is to pay 3, and you can move all the counters from target land I control onto target creature, and if one or more 1/1 counters are moved this way, you gain that much life and draw cards. So this is card draw, this is counter distribution. It's absolutely, this gets out of hand, especially every time a creature enters or another creature enters, you're putting lands on it. This is the deck that got taken apart to make Miles, and it snowballed out of effect. So we got some fancy cards here. So we got Spectacular Spider-Man. So he has Flash. He's here because he's Spider-Man, and you've got to have a Spider-Man in the Spider-Man themed deck, I suppose. But he's an interesting card. He can gain flying. He has Flash, and you can sacrifice him and creatures I control gain hexproof and indestructible. So he's another way of protecting it. He's another kind of Boromir style heroic interventions type effect, and this is a creature heavy deck, so we want ways to be able to protect our little guys. So we have Aranya, Heart of the Spider. So whenever you attack, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature. And then whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So this is a great way to get some card draw and another way to start distributing counters, getting the counters. We want the counters to get out of hand. So we have Silk, the Web Weaver. So she has web slinging. I'm not really worried about the web slinging abilities. It's something that's neat, but we're mostly here for the second text here, which is whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. So like I said, we have a lot of human synergies in here, and this makes more human tokens. This is going to help us go wide. And then for that third ability there, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain vigilance until end of turn, and that's a repeatable effect. So you can probably just dump that. Like if you have 15 mana to dump into that to give everyone +6/+6 in vigilance, it could maybe end the game. There are some game enders. This is not one of them, but it could be because it goes wide. So we have Tifa Lockhart. So she is a person who wants the counters, and whenever a land you control enters, you double her power. She has landfall, and landfall's nice. We can play around with that ability, but she's here to be a really good target for something to put counters on, or to move our counters on, or to start watching the counters get out of hand, and she can and will just absolutely wreck someone and one-shot them. So Kamal is kind of our Craterhoof Behemoth adjacent card. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. And then for 1 and a green, target land you control becomes the elemental. It has a whole bunch of other texts on it, but he's mostly here just to come down, give everything +3/+3 and trample. That's an overrun effect. It's attached to a body and it's every combat. We don't really have a lot of. That's one thing that I'm severely lacking in this deck is ways of having multiple combats. But that's like I said, this is the beta version of this deck. We'll see what works. We'll see what it doesn't. There's stuff that I'm not particularly attached to or married to. Not one of those things is not my wife here, Aerith Gainsborough, so she does a lot of the things that we want to be doing. She's human. She has lifelink. Whenever I gain life, she gains a counter. And there's a lot of other tricky ways to gain life in this. There's like I would say sub-theme number 3 is life gain in this deck, but that's just Selesnya doing Selesnya things. But whenever she dies, you get to move those counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on Aerith. She's a no-brainer in this deck. Also, like, I'm willing to pay a ridiculous amount of money for the version of her with the steel folding chair. I need that to hit the storefront so I can be irresponsible. We're going human tribal. And this is a game ender in Human Tribal. So this is Rick, Steadfast Leader. So when he enters, you get to choose 2 abilities from among First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. And humans you control have each of the chosen abilities. And as long as you control 4 or more humans get +2/+2. This has ended games. This has ended games before. This is one of the best cards in this deck, and he ain't going anywhere. And Rick is baby girl and has saved me many times. So this is another questionable card. This is Nayeth of the Dire Hunt. We don't really have any fight spells in here, but this is a way of card advantage through blocking. People are definitely going to block. There's not a lot of ways to get trample in this deck, but sometimes some of the creatures get really big, like if you have like a big Tifa and it has to be blocked or they're going to die. But it's a way of drawing cards, and then you can use Nair's second ability there at the beginning of combat on your turn. You may pay 2 and a Gruul, and if you do, double target creature's power. That creature must be blocked, so you can definitely find ways to force it. There's little interesting things you can do with this card and forcing people to block, and I'm not mad at forcing people to block and lose things and also drawing cards. It seems like a win more card, but we'll see how it performs. So next we have Minwu Rebellion Strategist, which is Mangara the Diplomat. So whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking me or Planeswalker, I draw a card. And whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. So this is white card draw. This is like the OG version of white card draw. But he's a human, he's legendary, he's card draw, he's on flavor. This is a card that always works good in my head, but like almost never works on the table. But we're going to try it out again here. This is Seraph the Viper's Fang. So other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch, and other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. And then for 1, you can tap Seraph and untap another creature or land you control. And the tricky thing you could do is you could give something Death Touch, or you can untap something that's being targeted by a removal spell to give it instant Hexproof if it is tapped. There's a lot of tricky things you can do. I really want this card to work. It's a pet card that I usually put in a lot of decks, and it almost always does nothing in practice, but it's legendary, it's a human, it gives a little bit of evasion, even though Miles has evasion built in, but we have other things that we want to protect that can't turn invisible, like Mr. Morales, so we'll see how it goes. But I have high hopes, and Death Touch is always fun. So, fun fact, this is my misprint Kyler. It does not have the stamp, and I don't know if that's worth anything. I've never looked into it. I've just came out of the pre-con looking like that. But whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Kyler, Sigardian Emissary, and then other humans you control get +1/+1 for each counter on Kyler. So this is a human anthem, and it gets out of hand real fast. This is another one of those 1/1 counters cards where you're definitely going to need the entire bag of dice, and it could get out of hand, and it's a really good card if we're going human tribal. So we have Micaius, the Lunarch. So he enters the battlefield with X11 counters on him, and you can tap him to put a counter on Micaius, and then you can take a counter off of Micaius and put a counter onto everyone else. So you can kind of tide the counters out. It's a cool way to kind of play around with counters and see what we can do with it. It also has an X spell, so if we have a lot of mana, we could put a bunch on Micaius, or you can slowly build him up, tap him on end step. There's some interesting things you can do if this sticks around. So we have Victory's Envoy. So at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control. I like really clean, straightforward cards like this. It gives us everything we want. It is a human. It's not legendary, but I feel like the value, like a lot of the non-legendary humans in this deck have to do something very substantial to the other parts of the game plan. Granted, like, it's okay to break the rule. Like, I have something like 25, 26 legendaries in this deck last I checked, and that's quite okay. And Victory's Envoy is definitely going to give us a lot of what we need, which is counters. So we have Eternal Witness. I just like this art. That's it. It comes in. We know what she does. She gets you something out of your graveyard. You get to play it again. That's fun, and art is gorgeous. So, not human, but we have Sigarda, who cares about humans. I have the other Sigarda, and she actually did not make the cut. The other Sigarda from, I believe, Midnight Hunt, only because she's like funky card draw. And this one seems a lot more, Sigarda, Heron's Grace here seems a lot more honest. But you and humans you control have hexproof, and she lets you make humans by exiling cards from your graveyard, so we can turn junk in the graveyard into bodies, and there's a lot of human support in here, so she's on the maybe list also, but we'll see. This card is sweet, and I love this card, and I've juked so many people out with the Wandering Rescuer, but it has Flash Convoke, so we can tap our dudes to cast this early, and she has Double Strike, and other tap creatures you control have Hexproof, and she's a decent body. She's pretty easy to cast because we can Convoke her, and we have Flash, and this deck goes wide, so being able to kind of juke her in there is pretty interesting. You can also use her to save creatures that are being targeted by something. This is a really sneaky card, and she's human, she's legendary, she protects us, and she protects the neck. So we have the Hero of Light, which is actually Adeline Resplendent Cathar. So her power is equal to the number of creatures you control. This is a go wide deck. Let me scoot this up a little bit. This is a go wide deck, so we definitely want to go wide. And then whenever you attack for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with this, mostly because like there's a lot of cards that care about humans entering, like something like Kyler. So even if people are just blocking all those things, and let's say we have something like Nayeth out and people are just blocking the stupid 1/1s, but we're getting the value out of this, and we could be gaining life. This has a lot of synergy with a lot of other cards in this deck. And Adeline's a beast. I have a lot of love for Midnight Hunt. Speaking of Midnight Hunt, we have Katilda, the Dawnheart Prime. It's hard to build human tribals and not dig into Innistrad stuff. But it has protection from werewolves. That's important. But human creatures you control have tap to add mana of any of that creature's colors, so they become mana dorks, and they could just tap for whatever their color identities are. And Katilda also lets us put counters on stuff, so it has some good late game value also. So Katilda is a real one in this deck. Also, she says humans you have this ability. Katilda is a Selesnya mana dork. She counts herself because she is a human. So more Midnight Hunt Innistrad stuff. There's a lot of that in here, but Human Tribal is going to bring you there. So we have Lenore, the Autumn Sovereign. She's in here because she is a piece of card draw. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, you put a 1/1 counter on up to one target creature you control. Then if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, draw a card. And it's pretty easy if you just keep track of just, like 3 things are not the same. And then you draw your card, and also you draw the card at the beginning of combat, so you get the card right away. So, well, not right away, but you can play this on your main phase and then go into combat and immediately draw the card, and then potentially have something for your second main phase. So Lenore is a real one. We're humans. We need card draw. Esper Sentinel. I own it. I'm going to put it in the deck. And we know what Esper Sentinel does. And the fun thing is, in a deck like this, with all the 1/1 counters, if Esper Sentinel starts getting counters, like everyone's like, oh, I'll pay the 1. But once it starts turning into paying the 4 or the 5, it gets a little harder to do, and you start consistently getting the card. So Esper Sentinel, great card to have early in the game. Kind of a bad draw late in the game, but it's a decent card to start putting counters on too. Like, I'm never mad to put counters on Esper Sentinel. We have Abzan Falconer. So like I said, any of the non-legendary humans in this deck have to be able to do something very big. Abzan Falconer gives all the homies flying. Anybody who has a 1/1 counter on it can just fly, and it's a great way to be able to block tricky stuff. And also, if no one has flyers, then we're going to start beating heads. So Abzan Falconer does his stuff. So next we have the Web of Life and Destinies. So as Convoke, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. So this is one I'm interested in seeing how it performs, because it costs 8 mana. We can convoke it out to get it a little cheaper. I imagine we'll probably be paying maybe 4 or 5 for this most of the time if we get it, like, say it's on our opening hand or something like that. But I'm interested to see what this does. It's going to let us just get a creature every turn. It'll let us recover from board wipes. It'll let us cheat something out. I'm really interested in seeing how this performs, and we will see. It can do some fun things, but it might be a win more E card. So now we have our 1/1 staple bangers, so our bangers for 1/1 staple strategy. So we're going to start with Hardened Scales. So anything that gives us a counter, congrats, you get another one, +1. That's what Hardened Scales does. We have Doubling Season, so we are going to double up anything that generates counters. One of the cool things about this deck is that the counter generation is in the command zone, and this is, I believe, I foresee this as being a deck where I would not actually care if Miles gets removed. If Miles Ultimate Spider-Man gets removed, and I'm very happy to spend the 4 mana to cast Miles again, because I'm always going to have access to some sort of generation of the counters. And I'm very kind of iffy on cards like Doubling Season. I have a whole bunch of copies of Doubling Season, but I didn't put one in my Wolverine deck that also cares about 1/1 counters, but that just feels like something that's clunky to curve in. But I feel a lot more comfortable finding a home for Doubling Season in this deck. We have Cathar's Crusade. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, including the creature that enters, because it sees itself get entered. This is a nutty card. It gets out of hand. It's a 1/1 counters deck, and this will absolutely accelerate the game towards the end. We have Branching Evolution, so it's Doubling Season, but for 1/1 counters only. And it's a good card. We have a lot of 1/1 counter synergy in here. We want to be able to double those guys up. We have Bast's Blessing, which is what I like to call unhinged Doubling Season. I'm very against this card. However, it's Primal Vigor. It's from the Black Panther Secret Lair. We got to have all but one T'Challa card in here, because the one I took out it's bad. It does not work in this deck at all. But Bast's Blessing, so if you're going to make a token, then double it. If you do 1/1 counters, you double it. However, this works for everybody, so this can bite you in the butt, but however, I think we'll be the main ones taking advantage of it. And, it's also kind of a fun card to have on the board and just watch things kind of erupt. But our deck is designed to take the most advantage of it. So we have some of the new cards here. So we have Peter Parker's Camera. So fun fact, this gets doubled by Doubling Season. So if you played this into a Doubling Season, then you'll get 3 rolls of film you'll get 6 as opposed to 3. But it's a little piece of card draw. We'll see how it performs. This is another card where I can probably put something better in here. I could put like a, double in pairs or something like that. There's a lot of other options to draw cards in green and white and even red. But I like the flavor of this. I just pulled it from a pack, and I'm curious to see how it performs. So we will see. Also, it lets us copy, target, and activated or triggered abilities. So there's some funky stuff we can do. We have the Earth Crystal. So this is a card that it does everything we want. It's going to double 1/1 counters. It's ramping us for green spells. It's also giving us a source of distributing counters. And the fun fact about this card is that it sees its own it sees its own activated ability. So it says distribute 2, but you're actually distributing 4 because the card sees itself. The Great Henge. It's counters. It's creatures. It's life gain. It's ramp. It's everything that you'd ever want in a card in this deck. So this card gets out of hand and will get removed, because if it does not get removed, the game just absolutely fast forwards to the end. So we have the Wind Crystal. Also, we're in the section. So we had the Earth Crystal. We have the Great Henge. We have the Wind Crystal. This one, not as much of a banger as its cousin there, but white spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is in the maybe pile there, but if you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. So this is doubling up on the life gain synergies, and we have a decent amount of life gain, so I don't think that'll ever not be relevant, but it's mostly here just for that tapped ability also, where creatures you control gain flying and lifelink until end of turn, and that's just a good way to give people evasion. It's a good way to be able to have people jump in the air and start blocking stuff, because this is an attacking deck, so we want to be able to make blocking difficult, and if everything's flying, everything's lifelinking, then it's going to be a little difficult for our opponents. We have the Ozolith, and this is basically just insurance for our counters. When we're doing 1/1 counters stuff, we want to be able to keep the counters, so if stuff starts getting removed via board wipe or things start blowing up, the Ozolith is going to retain a lot of our stuff, and usually it eats a second removal spell, but I would happily, I like cards that draw things out of people's hands, and the idea of the Ozolith holding on to all those counters is going to get scary. And fun fact with the Ozolith, but when you move counters from something like, let's say if there's a board wipe and you have 20 counters, and you also have doubling season, and those 20 counters go to the Ozolith, it becomes 40. Then you move the counters back from the Ozolith, then it becomes 80. And I've had that happen where I just absolutely one-shot somebody with the Wandering Emperor. She is a queen. So Silk Guard, this is part of our protection suite. So put a 1/1 counter on up to each of X target creatures you control, and there's a text here about auras, equipment, and modifier creatures gain hexproof until end of turn. So it can kind of be a diet heroic intervention. Never mad about that. It's going to let us protect a lot of the stuff that we need to. Anything that's also modified, and if we're doing things correctly, the whole board will be modified, so it could just be heroic intervention in that situation. Well, it doesn't give them indestructible, but the hexproof is definitely could be relevant, especially if people are targeting artifacts. They're trying to blow up my Ozolith or something like that. This could be a great way to save our stuff. We have Greater Good, so there's going to be a lot of really big, chunky creatures, and sometimes you just want to eat one for value, and that's super okay. So sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to its power, then discard 3 cards, and I'm super okay with that. So you have Guardian Project. This is another source of card draw, so basically just cast creature, get spell. It cares about non-token creatures entering the battlefield that doesn't have the same name as the other. We have nothing but legendary creatures. This is the game of Commander. This will basically draw us a card anytime we cast a creature, and that's pretty dope. So we have Amazing Alliance, another one that's in here just for flavor reasons, and also because I have it. But creatures you control gets +1/+1, and whenever you attack with one or more legendary creatures, you gain that much life. So we have Banner of Kinship. So as it enters, choose a creature type. This artifact enters with a fellowship counter for each creature you control of the chosen type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each fellowship counter on this. And obviously, we're going to call humans. We're going to call humans every single time. This is another one that it can get doubled with doubling season. That's Magical Christmas Land Windmore Town, but I've literally had that exact interaction happen, and everyone just immediately conceded. So we have Earth's Mightiest Emblem. We're in our ramp package here, so the cards are going to get a little less exciting, but this is just Arcane Signet. We know what this does. We have Horn of Gondor. So when it enters the battlefield, we get to create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Then we can tap it to create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token where X is the number of humans you control. So it cares about humans. We care about humans. It's going to help us go wide, and it does all the things. A lot of these cards are leftovers. The commander for my previous deck was T'Challa, and that Horn of Gondor was one of the MVPs of that old deck. So T'Challa's in the 99 now. We'll see how Miles handles. I could take more advantage of having red in the color identity. That's definitely something I want to be able to do when I'm editing this deck list. And I'll upload another video just to have some post on how Miles performs. But we have Patrick Manor, so choose a creature type, going to be humans. Creature get +1/+1, and it's a mana rock. So it's an anthem, it's a rock. We got some removal, so Farewell gets rid of everything, anything, and we could also choose what we get rid of also. So if we need to just bomb a graveyard or bomb enchantments, it's a very good card. Kodama's Reach, which is our standard 3-mana ramp. We have a fun Nature's Lore. It's got T'Challa chilling with the little Groot, and I think that's adorable. 3 Visits. We have Cultivate. So we have a lot of the green mana ramp package. I like a lot of the board wipes. I like the side of white that's good at board wipes. Like there's none of the red board wipes are in here. But Austere Commands, again, just going to let us pick and choose, or we can just pick all the things, get rid of, I mean, not all the things, it says choose two, but we can just get rid of all creatures if we want to. If there's any artifacts, someone's playing too many treasures, you get cards that are modal tend to not do bad things. So we got Path to Exile, some of our spot removal, and this is from Arcane. We have Heroic Intervention, so I did pull the Heroic Intervention with Spider-Man on it, but I feel like, solidarity with Brother Morales here, so we're going to go with the Black Panther Heroic Intervention. Also, just look at that art. It's sweet as hell. He's kicking Claw. Claw likes to rhyme in the comics. I need to upgrade this because I have the Sonic the Hedgehog Generous Gift, and we're going to do that later. But Generous Gift, targeted removal. This is an experimental card, but sometimes people swing in, and I just like blowing people out for swinging in a little too hard. And it seems, I really like modal cards. It's part of the appeal of playing something like white, where you could just tap 2 just to destroy a creature, or it can be a total blowout if you hold on to it later. It could save you now, it could save you maybe later. We'll see how it performs. I have not actually resolved this one yet. So we have Chaos Warp, so more of our removal. Beast Within. I did get the Lizard one from the Spider-Man box, but I'm debating if I want to put it in a deck. We have Wedding Ring. Did not get the Spider-Man one, but that's fine because, I don't need reminders about one more day. But we have Wedding Ring here, so we're going to marry someone, which is going to be fun. We're going to draw cards. This is just a fun card. It's not the best choice for card draw, especially because we have access to green and we have access to red in the Impulse, but this is just a fun card. I like marrying people mid-commander game. Who wouldn't want to marry me? So we got the Soul Ring, the fun one, Tony Stark's Heart, and Relic of Legends, which is tap and untap legendary creature to add 1 mana of any color. And with when you're doing legendary matters, this card puts in some work. It's one of those you don't realize how good it is until you actually start doing the thing that you're like, oh, you could just tap any legendary creature, and then you could start getting real far ahead of curve. So I don't get into lands too much, and I don't know why I'm showing off Jungle Shrine here, but I got some interesting lands here that I wanted to show off. So less show off, but just more that we're incorporating. So we got Daily Bugle Building, and waiting for my stabilization juice thing. We have Daily Bugle Building, and that's going to be an interesting one because target creature gains menace until end of turn, activate only his sorcery, because that damn Spider-Man's a menace. So we can make anyone a menace in here. We can make Ryu a menace. We can make Daljim a menace. We can make Aerith a menace. But this is one that I like making blocking difficult for people. And this is also just, it's the flavor slam. You know, we will be able to slander our own creatures with the power of the Daily Bugle. So we have the Grey Havens. So when enters, scry 1 and add 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures in your graveyard. So, you know, when homies start dying, this becomes, you know, it doesn't come in tapped. It lets us scry. It uses the graveyard to kind of utilize what we can tap for mana. And it seems like a good card. This is another hard maybe, but, you know, it's land. Oran Reef, which lets us put creatures on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. This is a hard maybe. A lot of the deck leans towards green, but we'll see. We'll see how it works. We'll see what it does. I need more of those Lord of the Ring cards from. But here's some of the bangers, the actual banger that I was here for. We got 3 Tree City, choose a creature type, and it's basically Cabal coffers for creatures. We're obviously going to call humans and see how far we can go. But that is the first version of Miles Morales. So I want to keep upgrading this deck. I want to see how far it goes. I want to see what performs. I want to see what underperforms. I'm literally getting battle tested this weekend. So I'm really excited to be able to share a follow-up video, and we'll have like a post-mortem and see how things go. But you know, glad you're here with me. This Miles Morales is one of my favorite characters. Love the movies, love the comics. Don't care for him much in the PS5 game, but he really needs to do his homework, I suppose. That's an interesting character arc for him, but yeah, I resonate with Miles Morales a lot. I'm also Puerto Rican and black. I'm also from Brooklyn, New York, so gotta rep my boy. He's here in the Commander now, and definitely excited to see how this deck plays. So I'll be following up with some upgrades to this deck. Someone who gets fired. Some of these cards will be fired. There's a lot of cards that I want to add to it. To think off the top of my head, I definitely want Logan the Wolverine in here. I only have 1 copy of Logan, and I'm not taking him. I'm not taking him out of my deck. He's not a human. He is a mutant. That's a big maybe. Other cards that I would want in here. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Definitely would want some more extra combat oriented stuff. So like a round 2 or Karlach maybe. I know she's a tiefling. She's not a human, but mommy can stay. So yeah, but there's a lot. I definitely feel like red is the color that I have underutilized the most in this deck. It's still dominantly Selesnya, but that's super okay because a lot of the human and counter support comes from a lot of the Innistrad humans, and all the big ones are here doing their job. And like I said, I'll be following up, and we'll see how this deck evolves. But I definitely want to have this be a deck that I kind of show its progress, but it's far from fine tuned. And you know what? That's okay. So, thanks for watching. If you like, you can subscribe. You can follow me, comment on the video if you want to see any more. I got some deck techs coming up. I'm definitely going to do Venom. There's a whole bunch of Final Fantasy stuff that I haven't gotten into. I just need the time. And you know what helps me with the time? When you guys, you know, talk to me and, you know, give me some words of encouragement. That definitely helps me get over that hump. So, then again, deuces. Thanks for joining me again, and y'all have a good one.